What is a self-tape? Well, self-tape is exactly that. It's a tape you create of yourself, and it is usually for an audition, or unfortunately sometimes for a pre-screen for an audition, or perhaps a callback or a second audition. So it's usually for an audition. And what do you need for a self-tape? So there's something that you create at home. You usually have a plain background, doesn't have to be cream. White sometimes can be a bit harsh. So cream, beige, grey, blue, they're usually quite good colours if you've got them for your background. It doesn't have to be a painted wall. It can be a sheet put up behind you. If so, I advise giving it a bit of an iron or a crease release before you clip it up, because you don't want it to be sort of really creased behind them, in my opinion. Or you can get sort of one of those softly mottled backgrounds that people use in more professional photography. So you need a plain background to keep it uncluttered. Again, these rules can then be broken for certain self-tapes. My child and I had one once that we had to create props and background, etc. So in general, you have a plain background, but again, these are rules that I'm giving you to start with, but then they can be made to be broken in certain circumstances. So you got your plain background. You want as much light as possible. Natural light is good if you can have it. Again, if you're asked to do a self-tape in a very short amount of time and it's winter, perhaps you haven't got the ability to get a lot of natural light. I've used natural light here from 2 windows, but I have pulled the blinds so that it's not really bright. And I've actually added a small light as well. You can use a ring light with a pillowcase on it. It's good because then you don't get the kind of ring in your eyes. Softbox lights are wonderful if you want to invest in those. But for me, I find I don't have a huge amount of space, so leaving them up is a pain, and taking them up and putting them down is a pain. So I've just got a small light here on a stand, and I've got it on its kind of bluey whitey setting at the moment to try and mimic that natural light. What else? I've got my little list here so I didn't forget anything. So yes, we want a plain background. Yes, we want to be well lit. I personally like, I'm not quite in that place. I personally like to be over on this side of the screen. I believe there's some theory to this as to where eyes are drawn. So you don't have to be, dead center in your screen. It wouldn't matter if you are. Oh, of course we are in landscape, not portrait. So you're not thinking about making a TikTok or a reel, etc. So you're always in landscape with your plain background, well lit. I've got quite a lot of shadow going on here actually. It might be better if you can balance it out and have a little less shadow. And actually usually on most phones they've got those grid lines. So you want to aim for your eyes to be sort of over towards this third and sort of in the middle. You don't want your eyes all the way up here, all the way down here. And it's good to have the camera at eye level. Again, these rules you might want to break for particular self-tapes. If you're trying to make the character look really small, maybe you want the camera looking down on them, or maybe you want them looking down on the camera. When you've done some self-tapes, you might get more exciting, but for your standard self-tapes, most agencies or people who are auditioning you want the plain background, well lit, want you possibly in the center or over to the side of a landscape recording. So a self-tape is a tape that you record at home. It's not actually a tape anymore, is it? It's a video in this way. Usually it's scripted. You're given a script or part of a script, which you learn and then perform to camera. If it's too much, you don't have to learn it. I would suggest you do, because if your competition's learning it, you perhaps should be learning it. And when you're reading something, you're not fully in it, you're not fully acting. So I would suggest if you're given a script, learn it. Again, for young actors, their brains are fresh and they're learning all the time, and it's usually pretty easy to learn some lines. It might be a monologue, a one-person performance, but there perhaps and often is other lines read in. You need somebody to read those lines in for you. They are not on camera, they're usually the other side of the camera. Perhaps you have an eye line, unless you're asked to do it directly to camera. Find a little eye line just off camera where you're talking to that person. Are they a particularly tall person? you know, older than you or standing over you, an adult perhaps, focus it up. I wouldn't suggest looking down because your eyes aren't going to be caught by the camera so much. But you can play around with it. Oftentimes you're asked to do it directly to camera, especially if it's a commercial. Great, then just look at the dots or the camera and do that. If not, and you are talking, I mean, if you're talking to two other people, you might want to pick somewhere for one and somewhere for the other, and then you flip between those two people. You can use dots, sticky notes, teddy bears are often used. This was a nice tip from my daughter's agent. You know, if you're talking to 2 or 3 different people, put 2 or 3 different teddy bears and they know which one is which character. That was a really nice tip to use. Seems to work really, really well. So yeah, eyeline is important. It's usually a memorized piece. It's usually quite short, and there may be other characters reading in the lines. Don't worry too much if you're reading in the other lines, but you might want to put on an appropriate voice or tone and keep it pacey for your young person or yourself, of course. I'm kind of aiming this as if you were the parent or guardian of a young actor, but if you are a young actor yourself, yeah, call your parents in, get them to read in for you. You may have a friend who's perhaps also an actor and wants to read in the characters for you. It's important that they're kind of on it and get their timing, because you don't want to be sort of sat waiting for them to say the lines. Get yourself a good reader, have a practice, and then record it. Of course, there are other things involved in a self-tape, often, not always. Usually slate your self-tape. If you don't know what a slate is, I will create a video for a slate and I'll pop that in the description below so you can find out what the slate is. You're usually asked, and even if you're not asked, then slate your self-tape. Sometimes other things are asked for. It's not just a script that you've been asked to learn. You might be asked to chat about yourself for a while, or what you did at school, or I don't know, what do you think about Christmas? Could be absolutely anything, usually relevant to the job that you're going for, that you've been asked to self-tape. So they could be that you could plan that, or you could spontaneously improvise that. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good old drama coach video. I will link in the description below the video to what is an improvisation, if you don't know what that is, and the difference between spontaneous and devised improvisation. So something that's made up on the spot and something that's planned. And so I must pop that in there for you as well. So let's think this through and recap what we need in a self-tape. We need to be in landscape. Your at-home camera, you know, your camera on your phone or your parents' phone is totally fine. You need some good lighting, plain background, facing the camera if you're asked to, or slightly off camera if you're asked to address a character. Usually scripted, might have some spontaneous or devised improvisation bits, or just you chatting as yourself about yourself. You also might want to style yourself a little bit for the self-tape. If the character you're going for is particularly rocky, then maybe you want to add a leather jacket. If they're particularly sweet, maybe you want to style your hair in a fashion that you think is sweet. It needs to be off your face so that your facial expression can be seen. But if you need it down, then just take some of it off your face. Yeah, I really enjoy styling, actually. Have a play, maybe do a little bit of styling, watch yourself back, and if you want to change or tweak the styling, then do. I'm just going to check my notes and see if there's anything else I wanted to add. No, yes, the softbox lights would be nice if you have them, if you have extra light, include it. But generally you can do quite well with natural lighting. Oh, and of course, make sure it's quiet, turning off dishwashers, washing machines, etc. at home to make it nice and quiet, closing windows, because the microphones on your cameras are good, but having extra background noise is not so good. I had a dripping dishwasher for one of my child's self-tapes, and then I had to do it all again, which was good practice and it didn't matter. But yeah, just check the sound around you before you start. I really hope that's helpful, and I'd love to hear how your self-tapes are going.